African Americans are cloaked in stereotypes of all sorts. These range from the way they behave, their personality, and their so-called categories. But every single story has its origin, and these ones originated from the slave trade. African Americans have a long and complex history. In any historical film, depictions of African American men and women are often confined to degrading stereotypical images. In context, these films were shot during or just after the American Civil War, when North and South conflict was still very, very evident. Dominant characteristics of African Americans in these films are as follows. Even the more positive roles of African Americans in film, such as the loyal servant or butler, only reinforce the idea of white supremacy, and we can safely say that blacks were intentionally shown in a negative light to highlight the idea of white superiority and black inferiority. They were essentially of a lower class. History has shaped the world of today, so how have these 20th century African American stereotypes been translated into the urban language? Unfortunately, they haven't changed much. Blacks are still seen through the same eyes, surrounded by the same stories. These stories are only reinforced and strengthened by the media. The first one that we have is, he is someone who is always being chased and harassed, generally because he's a black. Also, the tongue cannot defend themselves. He is unwilling or unable to do so. We then have, and this is perhaps the most insulting stereotype there is, the coon is unreliable, lazy, interested only in eating fried chicken and watermelons. We then have the bad guy. Yeah, he's a big, buff, vicious thug, usually a drug addict or an alcoholic. He has little to no respect for other people, and he's often moody and very, very quiet. So those were some stereotypes that focus on men. But what about women? We can name just as many for them. The first one that we have is, she's a placid woman, often acting as a mother figure. She is obese, non-threatening, very religious, and also quite unattractive. And we then have the black bad girl. Yeah, she gets bad grades, she's rude, she's aggressive, and she's a bad influence on her community. She wreaks havoc. And we then have, she's the otherwise known as the angry black woman. She's very, very loud, very, very stubborn, and very, very demanding. And anyone who disrespects her is susceptible to her rage. Are these single stories untrue? Not necessarily. Remember, they are based loosely on facts, but also remember that these facts have been mutilated and distorted to the extreme until they're unrecognizable. So now we've established that blacks are portrayed through mainly negative stereotypes by the media. And as you can imagine, this has effects on the African American community, but also effects on future generations. The main effect of stereotyping is something called the stereotype threat. Basically, this is the pressure of having the stereotype surround you, and it is when the individual starts to believe in the stereotype and moreover be the stereotype. And this has many negative side effects, such as, but not limited to, number 1, where the individual is unwilling or unable to perform well in school or at work due to the negativity surrounding them. Number 2, basically, if the individual fails or does something badly, they blame themselves and not external factors. Number 3, in extreme cases, the individual may intentionally injure themselves so that if they fail, they have an excuse. Number 4, the individual is unwilling to try new tasks because they know that they will fail, because they believe in the stereotype. Number 5, often teenagers who face bullying due to stereotyping face identity problems, especially if they start to believe in the stereotype and become the stereotype. And finally, when the individual starts to distance themselves from the stereotype group and from people in general, they feel lonely and unwanted, and this leads to severe depression. So those were the main negative effects on the African American community. But what about the future? Well, children. Children will grow up watching these films and these television shows. So from a young age, they will learn of this so-called negative race of African Americans. They grow up with a racist and prejudice in mind. And they are basically just going to act mean towards these African Americans for no real reason. And it is safe to say that the media sets the tone for our beliefs of other cultures, especially in this generation. Those who have never encountered a black person believe that the stereotypes are based on reality and not fiction. And this is bad. There's so many effects to this. And basically we need to try and stop this.